Welcome to SkillCap's Guide, where we'll be giving you 7 incredibly useful tips for top lane. Everything featured in this guide will immediately be applicable to your gameplay and are tips that you'll be able to use regardless of what champion you're playing. Using these tips will help you consistently win more laning phases, so let's get right into it. For our first tip, let's talk about minion aggro, because it's going to be relevant for some of our other future tips as well. Everyone knows that if you auto attack or use a single target spell on an enemy champion, that you will draw minion aggro. This is usually seen as annoying, especially because it punishes you for being aggressive. It sucks trying to trade only to lose a ton of your own HP to the enemy wave. However, drawing minion aggro onto yourself can actually be quite useful if used properly. Top lane is all about building wave control over your opponent. Since the lane is often a melee versus melee matchup, whoever has the bigger wave tends to win every trade. During the early levels of the game, especially 1 to 2, most champions don't deal that much damage on their own. You don't have most of your abilities or items yet, so you deal very little damage. Despite this, what most players try to do is just spam auto attack the wave to build a minion advantage. Instead, you should try to draw minion aggro. This causes the wave to hit you, not your own minions. Meanwhile, your own minions continue dealing damage. Doing so will typically help you push way more than if you just auto attack the wave normally. The best way of abusing this is by trying to draw way more minion aggro than your opponent can. For example, this Camille exchanges auto attacks with Ornn, but let's take stock of their positioning. By trading here, Camille is taking aggro from Ornn's entire wave. Meanwhile, Ornn wasn't even in range to get aggro from the red minions. This is a huge pushing win for Camille and a big part of why she eventually earns the shove over Ornn. You can also try to time your auto attacks whenever your opponent is last hitting. This is a good trading habit in general, but another big reason to do it is that it lets you get wave aggro while they're busy CSing. So not only are you winning the trade, but you're also winning in the push by getting creep aggro. What's important to keep in mind is that it doesn't even matter that you took some minion damage in the long run. If you use minion aggro to get the push, being a bit down on HP won't matter. Having the bigger wave is the most important thing in top lane, and this is a great way of securing that push during those critical early levels. Now, the best way to secure the rank you've always wanted is, of course, using our service at skillcap.com. Take our top lane course on how to get diamond in 30 days. This will teach you step by step how to climb from low elo all the way to diamond as a top laner. This course has a perfect 5-star rating by over 20 players who are seeing insane results. And remember, this is completely risk-free for you to try, as you're kept safe with our rank up insurance. If you don't significantly improve while actively using SkillCap, then you get your money back, no questions asked. So click the link in the description below to unlock the full course to start improving fast and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, now back to the guide. Did you know that almost every single auto-enhancing ability in the game actually gives you an extra 50 range on your auto attacks? To put that into perspective, that is the difference between Aurelia's crazy 200 auto attack range and Fiora's average 150 range. This is important considering a ton of top lane champions have an auto-enhancer ability in their kit. Renekton's W, Malphite's W, Set Q, and so on. Typically, these abilities are often used as auto attack resets. Almost every single one of them will let you get in an auto attack and then reset for another quick auto. However, your opponents won't always let you do this, especially as you climb higher and higher. Players start spacing around these regular auto ranges to avoid taking damage, so don't tunnel vision too much on the perfect damage rotation. What good players will often do instead is just use the extra 50 range from their enhanced auto attack to sneak in way more damage than the average player. This is a big reason why champions like Jax or Camille tend to take the rune Grasp of the Undying. Once you're aware that this is something you can abuse, the extra 50 range makes it very easy to consistently get Grasp procs on your opponent to be very oppressive during the lane phase. This also pairs really well with our first tip. Remember how one of your goals was to land an auto without your opponent hitting you back? Well, using this extra 50 range on enhanced autos might let you do that in quite a few matchups. As we mentioned before, having the push in top lane is pretty important. But what happens when top laners have the slow push advantage going is that they get overly excited that they can win every trade. If your opponent walks up, you get to hit them for free, knowing that they can't fight back all that much. The problem with hitting your opponent during a slow push has to do with our very first tip. Remember, hitting your opponent draws creep aggro. If you've already got a slow push going and you draw aggro on top of that, you are going to push the wave very quickly. This problem is really visible whenever we watch players on ranged champions. The Teemo we're looking at is even diamond elo, but watch it how he's playing this lane. He's already got the wave shoving, but every time Kayle walks up, he hits her drawing creep aggro. Not only is Teemo tanking a ton of damage in doing so, but the wave is pushing even faster into Kayle. This means he's not punishing her nearly as much as he could be. The whole point of getting a slow push going is that you have complete complete control over the wave. Your opponent can't walk up and they'll feel miserable missing CS, giving you a gold lead. Not only that, but you generally want to slowly build up the biggest crash you possibly can. The bigger the crash in top, the more advantages you can get. It gives you longer to recall, roam, or just straight up harass your opponent under tower. So like we mentioned with this Teemo, he's throwing away a lot of these advantages. There's a very simple solution to this problem. When you're harassing, make sure you dip into a brush after every single auto attack. This will immediately drop creep aggro, which will make your slow push last longer and give you way more time to harass and build up a big wave. You can just tell how disciplined this Quinn is about doing so, and as a result is earning a lot more harass on her opponent. Back to the Teemo example. All he had to do was play in the left pocket of the lane. There's literally no reason to play towards the right side when he could just be standing near the brushes. We see this mistake being made constantly by players all the way up to Masters Elo, so make sure you remember this every time you got a slow push going. Obviously, we've highlighted ranged matchups for the most part here. Of course, this is definitely more relevant if you're playing ranged champions, but it can be applied on melee characters as well. For starters, you can use this concept to bait ranged players into pushing faster. Sometimes it's worth tanking an auto like this Kayle to get your opponent to crash the wave into you quicker. Or let's say you've got a slow push going and you want to sync up your crash with your jungler. You might want to not auto attack your opponent even if they let you, because it might push the wave too quickly and you won't be able to coordinate a dive. Sometimes not hitting your opponent might be the correct play. This concept is definitely relevant to know and is applicable in a lot of niche cases. It is very important to know that towers have an effect called fortification that blocks an extra 50% of damage taken before 5 minutes in the game. What we notice is that lower elo players can often forget about this effect, much like this Quinn. She's overstaying here thinking that she can get a turret plate before she bases, without realizing that it's almost impossible to deal that much damage before Irelia is back. This messes up her recall timing, eventually causing her to miss an entire wave as a consequence for her actions. However, there is a way you can actively play around this effect with a rune that many top laners tend to run: Demolish. You should have noticed that if you try to proc Demolish on a tower before 5 minutes, that the damage it does is fairly inconsequential. Typically, you can get a full turret plate with this rune's proc, but you won't get much value before fortification is gone. So if you ever find yourself trying to push a tower around the 5-minute mark, then you should avoid activating your rune before the resistances have fallen off. Try to find something else to do, like clearing the incoming wave, killing a ward, etc. This way you get a full value Demolish proc on the tower, giving you an instant turret plate and way more tower damage than you would have done otherwise. Tip number 5 is based on when you're running either Doran's Shield and or Second Wind. Most players either don't know or don't play around the specific tooltips of these items. Both the item and the rune heal you whenever you take damage based on your missing health. This means that the regeneration becomes much stronger as you start dropping lower and lower on HP. So what's the mistake that we notice players are making? The problem is that players tend to get scared to drop to lower health values with this setup. A lot of the power of this item and rune combo is dropping really low on HP and having effectively infinite sustain. However, when watching lower elo players play, we notice that they pop their potions even when they're not below half HP yet. This is a mistake because you're missing out on your overall health regeneration this way. Challenger players constantly play around this regen. You can see that this Renekton, despite taking a really bad trade, still refuses to pop their health potion. You don't want to use your potion until it's actually necessary. Otherwise, you're not maximizing the sustain that you could possibly be getting. On to tip number 6. Every top laner knows the feeling of being stuck in a bad lane state. If your opponent freezes on you and you get no help, it's game over. If they're building a massive slow push and you're about to get dove, it's also game over. Probably one of the most important skills to develop as a top laner is doing everything you can to avoid ever being stuck in a bad lane state. There's not one easy solution for that big problem, but here's a small tip that can help you every now and then. Because of this Quinn's earlier mistake, Irelia uses her lead to score a quick one-on-one. Afterwards, she looks to push the wave to get a turret plate. Usually what players do is walk up, hit the tower a couple times, then back up to the bush and channel their recall. This is a fairly long process that can give your opponent a lot of time to get back into lane. This might make you miss your recall timing, putting you in a horrible situation. You should start becoming way more aware of when minions can just get the turret plate for you. Instead of ever hitting the tower, Irelia begins channeling her recall. She knows that her own minions can take the plate for her, saving her quite a bit of time. This is especially nice in matchups where your opponent can get back to lane quickly, such as versus Sion, Kled, Quinn, Pantheon, etc. Or if your opponent has rushed tier 2 boots. Every second matters in those scenarios. The other benefit of doing this is that by recalling faster, you're also able to get back into lane before your opponent can crash the wave. If you already have a lead, this just means you can freeze the wave versus them. Now that Irelia is back in lane, there's absolutely nothing Quinn could do because she didn't have time to crash. Just like that, Irelia manages to kill her yet again. For our 7th and final tip, we wanted to include a more fun one. This is something you'll definitely feel really smart about whenever you manage to pull it off. In top lane, you'll often find yourself in a situation where either through a 1v1 or gank, you manage to kill your opponent but get really low on HP, sort of like this. Renekton is dead, but Aatrox is really low. From spots like this, you usually have two choices. One, you can crash the wave in time and then reset. reset, or 2, you keep the wave frozen and teleport back. What's handy to keep in mind is that healing in the fountain at this point in the game is slow, and death timers happen to be quite fast. So let's say you've killed your opponent and are crashing the wave. It could be smart to walk past your own minions, and instead of recalling, you just die to the tower. Not only do you resurrect at full HP instantly, but you even get the home guard effect whenever you respawn, so you can walk back to lane even faster. And remember, if you want to improve fasting at the rank you've always wanted, then head to skillcap.com. Our subscription service not only offers the highest number of courses available online, covering literally everything you could ever want to know about the game, but they're also specifically designed to accelerate your improvement as fast as possible. So click the link in the description below to unlock the most extensive and effective training resource you'll ever find. And that'll do it for this one. We here at SkillCap want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.